everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source. A couple of creators returning to the show to talk about their latest project coming January 8th. The book is called The Lucky Devils. It's my pleasure to welcome Charles Soule and Ryan Browne back to the show. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having us. It's always great to chat.
Yeah, so your guys' collaboration, I'd say at this point, is becoming legendary. We had, obviously, Curse Words with Wizard, which was amazing. And if you don't know, everybody out there, Charles actually made a concept album, which I highly recommend. Fantastic music. And then the follow-up to that, sort of its own thing, 8 Billion Genies, which also just blew up and had a ton of fans and is even in development, everybody at Amazon, for a movie. And now you guys are coming back with another project, which is sort of in the same world of 8 Billion Genies. So I'll throw it over to you, Charles. Why don't you give the elevator pitch, let our audience know what The Lucky Devils is about?
Absolutely. So The Lucky Devils is the next book in our apparently ongoing series of small supernatural things messing with human beings. With 8 Billion Genies, very obviously it was genies. With Lucky Devils, it is devils, but more specifically shoulder devils. So like the devil that sits on your shoulder and whispers in your ear and tries to get you to do bad things. In this particular story, the premise is that two people who live pretty kind of low down, humdrum lives meet their shoulder devils late one night, and the devils say, we're going to just fix your lives for you. This is like agonizing to watch. We're going to like just solve this problem for you. You're going to have great lives. You're going to be powerful people, influential. It's all going to be great. And the people aren't really given much of a choice. And we follow them as they interact and hang out with their devils and kind of become pals with them, and their lives do improve. But as the story continues, they are faced with a lot of many, many, many moral quandaries about the fact that the world seems to want powerful people, influential people, to do bad things. Like the way society seems to work is that it's really easy to be bad and it's really hard to be good. And so that's the story. If Genies was about desire, this one's about temptation, which is a very fun thing to play with. And obviously Ryan Browne is drawing the absolute hell out of it.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about that, Ryan. Being that it's these little supernatural creatures, there are some similarities with the story visually from 8 Billion Genies, but how does it differ? Like, how are you approaching it? Is it just the design of the little creatures? In terms of visual storytelling, are you taking a different tack? Talk to us a little bit about the look and feel of the book.
Yeah, so that was very important, just like with Genies, getting the design right on the devils. And Charles had said early on that he wanted them to be kind of like insect-like, and like crawling around our characters. And so that was the thing that really got it for me, was that they don't just sit on your shoulder. They mess with you. They raise your blood pressure by sticking their tail up your nose. Like there's most of the moments that we have the devils, the human beings can't see them, and so I treat them color wise in this way so that they you as a reader that you're seeing something no one else can see, right? And so like you see someone getting mad or having a bad day, and there's a devil just like slapping them on the side of the head repeatedly. But the person doesn't know that. They just have a headache that day, right? And so there are all these different ways for the devils to mess with the people and help guide their actions, but they're not making the decisions for the humans. They're just kind of pushing them that way by whispering suggestions or like I'm doing a lot of stuff with the devil's tail, which is a really fun mechanism to like guide the reader's eye. Like I have tails that come out of panels and then point to the next panel, or focus on the important part of the drawing by having the actual tails like point at it.
I mean, it's literally an arrow. I mean,
it's an arrow.
Each devil's
right?
tail is an arrow, so it's great.
Yeah, it's an arrow. So like I'm having a ton of fun with that, and like a lot of things that I'm doing where you could a lot of things you could only do in a comic, and it's really, really fun to have then the grounded humans, and the designs are very grounded as much as I can, without I don't use photo reference or anything, but they're very grounded in like I'm trying to draw people to look like people in believable environments, and then you have these devils that clearly don't belong there. It was the same thing with genies, except genies they were more cartoony.
Mhm.
Now they're cartoony in that they're rubbery and they're spindly and so like getting that feel for them helps, that informs to Charles what he's going to put into the scripts and how he's going to, like he hasn't seen a lot of the stuff that I've been drawing recently, and I'm just kind of elaborating on his script, and then he's going to go back with the art and he'll be able to, incorporate that in editing, dialogue before it's lettered and stuff. It's very
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah, and one of the things that's so interesting, so with genies, this idea of desire, and if you could have any one wish, what would it be, and that sort of thing. And certainly people can relate to that in that, we all have things that we, wish our lives were like or whatever. But if you boil it down to one thing, some people, it might be kind of hard to choose. This one
Mhm.
feels a little more relatable in that I think we all have temptations every day in our life. I mean, I'm tempted to not get out of bed or go to work or, to
Sure.
say the wrong thing to the wrong person or flip somebody off in traffic or whatever it might be. So I know that's something that's really interesting for you, Charles, this idea of these moral quandaries, these moral questions that we have in life. Even going back to things like Letter 44 that you've done in the past, or
Mhm.
the Hell to Pay series, the Shrouded College series that you've done. So did that factor into choosing this as a follow up to 8 Billion Genies to really kind of dig in and explore those ideas of some themes where your interests kind of lie naturally?
Yeah, I mean the thing that Ryan and I try to do in every story that we create together is make it simultaneously like kind of smart and stupid at the same time. And when I say stupid, what I really mean is like kind of like fun and over the top and wild, and things happen that are kind of like from they're not super grounded in a way that is very like fun to see on the page, but at the same time it's always like that sort of frosting, that fun, wild, crazy frosting is built on top of a very rigorously constructed set of like rules and story infrastructure that goes underneath. And within Devils, what we're doing is we're playing with the idea of deals with the devil, which is a very well-worn story trope in like Faust. I mean, there's tons of it. Uh, but also we're messing with the very idea of like hell itself and what it means. And one of the things that's been really, really fun in this book is to create hell as a complete reflection of our world. So it's not like fire pits and sinners being tortured and all that stuff. It's literally just where the devils live. And so it's like it's presented as a gigantic city that has neighborhoods. The devils live in different neighborhoods depending on where their hierarchy is or where they are in the overall hierarchy of hell's society. And our two devils that we meet in this series are named Collar and Rake, and they're essentially like gig workers. They are not very high up in hell society. They are basically at the second to lowest level. They don't see any real way to get ahead, and they hate it. They're trapped in what's kind of a hyper capitalist or multi-level marketing system that is built to keep them down, and they find that incredibly frustrating. But that's also something that's going to be probably kind of relatable to a lot of people reading this book. Like we all feel, I think, that there's maybe something a little bit wrong with the way society's leaning these days, and we can use hell as this fantastical like analog that people will be able to relate to. So yes, relatability is always really, really important. I mean, this is a story with two little like gremlin like devils who are punk rockers and have mohawks and wear cool rock band t-shirts and all that stuff. But it's also stories about the the way that it feels difficult to get around the things that make our own lives kind of hellish from time to time. Like it just seems like you can't do anything about it. Hell's going to come for you no matter what you do or who you are. I don't know. It's fun to come up with like, oh, this is going to be fun for Ryan to draw. It's going to be fun for me to make jokes and gags on a page, and then build in all of the things that really make it connect with readers. And that's what we've always been doing. And Devils is certainly in that path.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I always say it's better value for your comic dollar because you're thinking about it later. You know, you get that surface enjoyment when you read it, but then
Hmm.
later you're thinking about the bigger ideas, or you're having conversations, about just about life, and you're like, hey, well, this is kind of funny, but this comic that I'm reading, and I always find that to be really fascinating. When we talk about that fun factor, Ryan, one of the things I love about your art style, and this was true in curse words, and you brought the same sensibility to 8 Billion Genies. You get a chance to do these sight gags, and you're kind of mentioning it with the tails before, sticking them in the nose and whatever. I'm curious how you come up with the ideas. Is it just divine inspiration as you're drawing it? Are there times where you think of something later, you go back and make changes? Give us a little peek into your process.
Yeah, so I do my deepest, most critical thinking when I'm doing the thumbnails, which I do digitally, which is when I take Charles's script and I figure out what it's going to look like. I mean, with every page, I have to figure out what panel is probably the focal point. I always try to think about like a beginning, middle, and end to every page. Reestablishing the environment and where the characters are to one another every time, on pretty much every page. Um, so I do a lot of that, like really critical thinking when I'm thumbnailing it. And then the gags come a lot when I'm penciling it. And it's more of like an intuitive thing. And then the final layer ends up being like I don't pencil very tight, so when I'm inking, um, inking is, you could talk to artists who have various different opinions about this, but inking is the time where I can like watch a movie while I'm drawing, right?
Gotcha.
Like
Yeah.
it's very like um, you know, it's just something that you can kind of turn off your critical thinking a little bit for a lot of it, and then that's when I will like fill space with signs and t-shirts and little dudes and I really love comics as a medium and what you can do in comics you can't do anywhere else. And so it's like if I have empty space, I'm going to fill it and whether you see it or not or it ends up being covered up with a word balloon, I mean, it is what it is. But it's those little moments that like if I'm just drawing two people in an apartment talking, like that the critical thinking of the acting of that I'm doing in the thumbnails, but the fun that I'm having is usually when I'm, putting whatever is in a picture frame on a wall. Um, so, it's just a lot of like entertaining myself when I'm going through that process. And if you look at curse words doesn't have a ton of that for the most part because it was such a long format monthly comic that I just had to like move and move and move. So there's a lot of backgrounds dropped, a lot of details are dropped out of the drawings. But with Genies, we just kind of accepted that it was just going to be late a lot, and we knew we had something important, and so the first 5 issues were all on time, but then 6, 7, 8 took forever and were oversized, and I just put all the doodles and weird things in there, um, and really just like slowed down to make it dense. I love making dense comics. I love um, you know to me, when you make a comic, you spend a month on it or a month and a half, and then someone reads it in 5 minutes. But I like to play to the audience that will read it in 20, 30 minutes and like look at all the drawings because that's how I read comics, which is why, I don't read them very fast. But exploring all this stuff, like I have space to create in there. And we have a medium where I can just basically do whatever I want. Um, you know, uh, so and as long as it's communicating on the same level as the rest of the story, like with this, if I do a weird sound effect or, putting in details, like as long as they're true to what we're doing and don't distract from it, like I'm not gonna draw like some crazy like dude farting on someone's head in the emotional core panel of the
Right.
of the book, but like
I mean, never say
when I
never, Ryan. I could see you doing that. I could absolutely see you doing that.
I could, but I was, I recently just drew this street view of hell and the Lucky Devils, and there are all these storefronts, and I was just like, I don't know what these storefronts are gonna be. I don't know what these signs are gonna say. Like, I don't know. But it was while I was inking it that I'm just like, you know, like I go back in and pencil in a sign, like even though the page is like two-thirds already inked, because I have an idea while my brain is kind of thinking about something else. Um, so yeah,
What
I
what
don't know. I
I
don't know,
so looping way back to the start of that question, which was how does Ryan do it? Divine inspiration, whatever. I worked with him for a long time at this point, and I think it is divine inspiration. I think it's the good Lord, the deities coming down and providing weird, silly gags to his brain directly that he puts on the page. It is very inspiring to see him do gag drawings. Like he does it like nobody else does. So I think it's just Jesus, I guess.
Well,
yeah, probably.
I mean, and that's one of the things that makes your collaboration so interesting because we talked before about kind of exploring the themes and what you do, kind of from a narrative perspective, Charles. But then, I mean, the sight gags that just make it so much fun. But when you get to those moments, and this is, I think, especially important for Lucky Devils, when you get to those moments of, hey, I want to see how the Devils are trying to tempt, these two protagonists that we have. Then it comes down to emotion and acting, and Ryan does that so well. I've had a chance to read the preview copy that Ryan was nice enough to provide me at New York Comic Con. Everybody, so if you've read that, you have more of an idea of what this is going to be like. But I know, so I've had some people ask, and I've seen some people wondering the structure for 8 billion genies. It covered a huge amount of time, 800 years by the time we got to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking at a similar structure for Lucky Devils? Is it going to be a kind of a shorter timeline? What are we looking at in terms of story structure?
It's similar but different. We thought the idea of providing readers with like an obvious framework for what the series was going to be from the beginning was smart in Genies, and so we've done something similar with Devils. Instead of 8 issues like Genies was, this is 9 because there are 9 circles of hell in Dante's mythology, and sort of it's become something that people associate with hell. And each one of those different circles has a different like sin or bad thing associated with it. And so the first circle of hell is considered limbo in Dante's mythology. The second is lust, and then gluttony, and then greed, and it just sort of goes down. And so there will be 9 issues. Each will descend to a deeper level of hell, thematically, right? It's not necessarily literal, but as the story continues, the reader feels this increasing sense of like descent, like, oh wow, this is getting really, really, really wild. It builds and builds and builds until we get to the 9th issue, which is where everything, I can say it goes to hell. That's a little cliched, but it really like the book needs to and will have this sense of things just sort of accelerating toward doom in a way that is going to be super, super fun, and I think is going to be really engaging, and every issue is going to feel like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what's going to be next, while also built around all these, like we all probably have experienced lust, greed, gluttony, all of the things that are part of the sort of sin architecture that we all kind of think about and live with. All of that stuff is baked into the book too. So we're doing a different structure. Obviously, it's not time, but it's more like themes, feelings, vibes, which I think will be really cool and people will dig it.
Well, it sounds like with that type of pacing, the kind of the stakes are getting ramped up as you descend, and things are getting even a little more crazy. So from a visual perspective, Ryan, is there any pressure like, oh man, as things ramp up, I've got to go even like further with either the emotional acting for the protagonist or what the devils are up to and that kind of thing? You feel any kind of sense of, kind of one-upping yourself from issue to issue, which I imagine would be challenging?
Yeah, I mean it's building upon what I'm already doing, right? And especially early on, I will just put a lot of little ideas or details down that I don't really know what they mean or don't know how they would actually work, and so then I can and hopefully we can discover them and figure out what they meant as we add on. Like I've done that in curse words, putting little character design moments that I don't know where those came from, and then like let's figure out how they're part of the story later, and so it's always like a building process. And with this first issue, we spent so long on it. We cut pages out, we moved pages to issue 2, we added pages, you know, the first issue is always like, that's your proof of concept, that's your statement about what you're going to be doing. And then everything else after that, once we've got the foundation of the building, is just building out rooms and detailing and doing work to like build the entire thing as a whole. Um, so the issue one of Genies and issue one of Lucky Devils doesn't exactly read the way every issue is going to read in the series, but what it does is it gets you comfortable in that world and be like, here's the rules, here's the boundaries, here's what it's going to look like. And so you know, and again, I think more intuitively rather than like a planner. So I don't know how crazy it's gonna get. Like, well, what ideas will I have in issue 6? I don't know. I am not drawing it yet, so
Mhm.
like I'll figure that out. But the one interesting mechanism of it is that we have. As Charles said, hell operates like a multi-level marketing thing. And so as you become more successful in making influential evil people on Earth, the devils get, better means. They get more money, they get a better place to live, they get better clothes, they are in a better place in society, but also they kind of grow. And so like we start scale wise, they grow. And so we start with our guys who are at like the lowest corporate rung, right? And they're little, but as they grow, they physically become more like intimidating, and they're not as much built to sit on someone's shoulder, and their horns will grow like antlers, and so what does that look like? I'm not totally sure. I've done, some character designs of some of the characters that exist at a higher corporate level in hell. But that will be a fun thing to add and build as they grow and change and become more scary, honestly, and like more
Mhm.
gruesome. Like it's very similar to like Jedi's looking more cracked and evil and glowy and dark as they become evil, kind of thing, right? So
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that idea of
I
their.
understand that reference very
I know you
clearly, Brian.
do,
I
yeah,
know what that means. I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, we like the idea of a sense of progression in our story, so the readers are kind of they feel that it's not just a static situation. Things are changing and going out of control in one way or another, and it's very I don't know. It's fun for us. I will say that we know what's going to happen in this book. We know the events of the story. We know where it goes, but we also leave ourselves vast amount of room to find new things within that framework. And the way that it typically goes is where we think it's going to go maybe evolves a little bit. So right around, and this is it's a 9 issue series, so I wouldn't be shocked if around issues 5 or 6 we start to realize that maybe we're telling a slightly different story than we thought we were, or something needs more focus, or something is really grabbing our attention, and so then we shift gears. But uh, that's part of the joy of the work that we do. I think is that we both have a lot of faith in each other's ability to land the plane. Like I have zero concerns that if like I know the ending of this book is a very wild ending. But I know that right it will look perfect. It will look fantastic, assuming that's what we end up doing. But I think we will. That we both really like the way we're going to end this thing, and it's gonna. I just can't wait to see what it looks like. But I don't know. It's fun. We just have a really good time working together. I think is the key takeaway to what makes our thing work is like we really just like doing it. It's a great time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that comes through in the story, and it makes it more fun for us readers to go along on the journey. That was true with Curse Words. That was true with 8 Billion Genies, and you guys have kind of built this little fan base, this little community. So I'm sure everybody's gonna show back up on January 8th in your local comic shop to pick this up. Everybody. Um, as we're winding down here, let's just remind everybody. Well, if there's anything else you want the audience to know, please feel free. But also remind them where they can follow you online. We'll start with you, Charles.
Sure. I mean, I think we've covered the book pretty well. I think the real takeaway is that if you like our stuff, you will really like this book. If you haven't read any of our stuff, but what we've been talking about sounds interesting, you will also really like it. This is a book by two creators who are really putting everything they have into this story. We are not half-assing this at all. And you know, that in itself is pretty cool. As far as where you can find me, I am online most of the platforms just as at Charles Soule, my first name and last name. On Instagram, I am Charles D Soule. And then I have a website that is charlessoule.com that has a web store on it that has a lot of ways to get the work that Ryan and I have done together, as well as a lot of other cool things too. Ryan?
Yeah, and I'm on Instagram and other things at Ryan Browne Art, and has the word art at the end, ART, and Brown has an E on the end. And then in terms of if you've never read any of our stuff, probably the easiest entry point is probably 8 Billion Genies, because it's you can get the whole thing in a deluxe oversized hardcover. It's about 10 issues worth of content. And then if you want a deeper commitment, there's Curse Words, which is available in a compendium that's 760 pages. We did that for 4 years. So that's the big one. But certainly the 8 Billion Genies hardcover is a really nice package. It's a great holiday gift.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
We're actually out of stock on it on the web store, Ryan. You're gonna have to send me some.
Whoops.
We'll put some more up, and you can get it in any comic shop. Should be able to get it for you too from Image.
Yeah.
So
yeah, fantastic. Well, I look forward to checking out more of Lucky Devils. It's been fantastic chatting. Thanks for taking the time to join me, gentlemen. Remember, everybody, it's in comic shops on January 8th. Let your local comic shop know. The day this comes out is the final order cutoff. So if you're watching this, past Monday, the 9th of December, final order cutoff has passed. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell your local comic shop, hey, I'm going to be reading this. I'm going to want every issue. That way they know to order you subsequent issues. It's the lifeblood of comic shops, pre-ordering. It's really a way you can help out Charles and Ryan as well. So again, everybody, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Gentlemen, look forward to the series. Best of luck with it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
And whether you're checking us out on YouTube or the audio-only feed, everybody, we really appreciate you taking the time. On the behalf of Charles and Ryan, we want to wish everybody a healthy and happy holiday season, and we'll talk to you next time.